All right, welcome to Seattle. I'm Yogi Roth, and today is going to be an incredible hour. We've got some very special guests. We've got Bill Courtney, Pete Carroll, and we're going to talk about success on the gridiron and in the game of life. Now, you've heard of Pete Carroll, head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, won a Super Bowl. You may not have heard of Bill Courtney, subject of a 2011 Oscar-winning documentary, Undefeated. Yesterday released his first book. So, fellas, I got to welcome you. And first, Coach, I got to ask you, what's it been like? Because the book just released yesterday, and I know it's probably been a little chaotic for you.
It's been nuts. Spent the last 2 days in Manhattan doing a bunch of press, and got a bunch of press after this. But honestly, the biggest honor of the whole deal is hanging out with Coach and you guys, and spend a little time talking about the book.
I like it. And Coach, I mean, you won a Super Bowl, you did the draft last weekend, you got practice coming up. Why would you make the time to come and do a conversation like this?
Well, I'm here for Coach Bill. He's done some remarkable things, and it's been very impressive to anybody that loves coaching, and I love coaches, and this is a ball coach, and so to give a little bit of time is easy. I'm glad we had a chance to do this.
We could end there.
Yeah,
That's good.
There you go.
We're done,
You
right?
got your soundbite. We're ready to roll. Well, you're going to be able to participate as well today. It's going to be a really interesting hour. You can follow all of us on Twitter at Pete Carroll. I am Coach Bill at Yogi Roth. All of your questions, submit them with Coaches Chat is the hashtag. We're going to be talking all afternoon on a variety of topics, from discipline to integrity to hard work to character building, et cetera, as we go through the process with these two iconic coaches. So, Coach, I got to ask you the obvious. Why'd you write a book, and why'd you call it Against the Grain?
First, why I wrote a book is ever since winning the Academy Award, I've been honored to speak all over the country, a host of different venues, schools, athletic organizations, the Paralympics, businesses, FedEx, Frito-Lay, and everywhere I go, when I finish the keynote, there's always people that come up and say, hey, I want to read more about that or hear more about that. Where's the book? Well, I didn't have a book, so now I got a book. And why Against the Grain? Why is it called Against the Grain? Is I own a lumber company, and I'm a football guy, and that's who I am and where I come from. And with hardwood lumber, if you take a rough piece of lumber and rub your hand over it, it gets splintery and it's rough. But if you sand it against the grain, it becomes beautiful and timeless, and it's an heirloom you pass down among generations. And when you see the most amazing runs that ESPN play over and over again, it's not some guy just outrunning the defense. It's a guy to have the courage to cut back into the teeth of defense, cut back against the grain. And so in both of my lives, in football and in the lumber business, when you go against the grain, it's when when the most timeless things happen, and it's the heirlooms that you can leave forever. And I think we need to go against the grain of a lot of things that are happening in society and business and politics and family and football. And the effort will be painstaking, but the rewards can be timeless.
Coach, Against the Grain is probably a phrase that you could agree with to a certain degree. You've always done things different in the public's perception. When you hear Against the Grain, or you have to describe the approach, the philosophy that you have had, why have you also gone against the grain so many times in your career?
Well, I hadn't meant to do that. That was never on purpose. It was just doing things the way it felt right to do them. But I found that quite often the scrutiny was, why are you the way you are? How could you have fun coaching football? How can the players enjoy it and have a good time doing it? It just seemed like we followed instincts, but it often put us in a position where we weren't doing things in traditional fashion. Sometimes it's harder to do things that way, and it's challenged more so. And so you have to have conviction in your beliefs to go ahead and kind of persevere through the challenges and the scrutiny and all that. But we found that the results have been very special and very unique, and it's always been worth it. And sometimes the hardest way is the best way, and that kind of applies here.
So for both of you, clearly you've had adversity, but you've gone against the grain, you've competed through it. How hard is that, to stay so true to a belief that maybe you're the only one in the room that has it?
Well, it's been just part of the makeup, that that I've grown up with, that if you believe strongly in something, then you're willing to fight for it and you go for it. And it doesn't really matter what other people think when you have that kind of conviction. And I found that's the best way to represent who you are, and the best way to do the best you can do is to stick truest to yourself. And so, we've been challenged, been fired, and kicked around quite a bit over the years, but it's always turned out best by staying true and believing in the things that that have made us the way we are.
Coach, I mean, let's make sure we set the stage for the viewers. You own and run a lumber company. You don't need to coach football.
No.
You don't necessarily need to go to the worst school in the Memphis community from public's perception. Kids that have extremely difficult backgrounds, difficult stories, have had to grit, have had to fight. But you went back and did it, and if you just watch the documentary or read any of the book, you fight, you stay true to your beliefs. How hard is that for you at the high school level?
It's a decision you make every day. If you just decide, I'm going to persevere, I'm going to win, to take a page out of, I will compete today, then it's really not that difficult, because it's just a decision you commit to. And at the same time I was doing the football stuff, I started a business in 2001, and 10 days after the day I swung the door open was 9/11. And how do you persevere in business? And how come 50% of our marriages in this country end in divorce? It's because there hadn't been a decision to persevere. You've decided to throw in the towel. You haven't decided to make the commitment to perseverance to making it work. And that tenet of perseverance matters in family and business and football, and when you've been kicked around and people call you crazy and that won't work and this won't work. And when you just stick to it, like Coach says, and make that decision daily and persevere, things happen.
You both get asked to speak around the country all the time, big audiences. And in my world of college football, when I talk to coaches, I hear the word character all the time. We got to recruit guys with great character. We want a team with great character. What does character mean to you, Coach? Because it's the first chapter of your book.
First of all, every one of us make mistakes. Every one of us have failings. Every one of us screw up. Every one of us have things in our closet. So when I hear someone describe another person as a high character individual, I find that interesting. I mean, because of what you know about them, you think they're a high character individual? I don't think if you just walk around and pat people on the back and you seem to be doing the right things, that makes you a high character individual. And the reason is, if being perfect and the perfect guy is a high character individual, then it's an unattainable goal, because you can't be that. Character to me is not about being perfect. It's about how you respond to your own failings and how you respond to challenges. The true measure of a person's character is how they handle the difficult times, not their successes. Anybody can be a champ when things are going well. It's how you respond to difficult times. So when I talk about a high character individual, I'm not talking about maybe someone who seems to be doing all the right things. I'm talking about the guy who screwed up but answered the call and done it right. Or I'm talking about the guy who life is kind of hit in the mouth, who hadn't fallen down and had the character and the will to persevere and bring himself up. So character is defined to me not about what you do when things are great, it's about what you do when things are tough.
Coach, you walk around this building and fall in love with everybody. Coaches are upbeat, they're excited. You talk to the analysts out there, whether it's Trent Dilfer or Steve Young, everybody talks about the excitement and what you've built here. When you were building this place and this program, staff, players, what were some of the character things that you were looking for around the people you were going to employ?
Well, we've always looked for competitiveness, and guys that really have a will about them, and we've come to understand that even deeper than just competitors in terms of their grit. And we're talking all about it. When you're talking about grit in our way of understanding, you're talking about perseverance and passion. And probably the thing that has attracted me to Bill's story is his passion for and his willingness to stand in there and fight against all the odds. Nobody thought you should do it. Nobody thought you could do it. But that never deterred you. That's what we're looking to instill. We're looking to infuse into our organization. We think it's maybe the key ingredient that determines success. And not is it always about ability, and not is it always about the background and maybe the the accolades of the school that you came from, or the education that you have. It's about what's inside of you and what makes you up and what drives you. And that's the character that we're looking for. And when we believe everybody has it to a certain extent, and we need to find our ways to draw it out of them and to bring it to the surface. And then we always use our guys that are the great grit guys as examples. This is a great story right here. This is a guy that's all about that.
Right, so let's keep going on that for a second in terms of, okay, you identify the characteristics that you want in players, in employees. How do you know which buttons to push with different personalities?
Well, the way you don't know that, you have to learn that, is what we feel. And we have to learn the guys that are coming into the program. So we do that through great observation, I hope, and a tremendous amount of communication. We need to figure them out and find out what they're all about. So we call it learning the learners. The guys that we have to teach and coach, we want to figure out what we can do to make sense to them. What we're trying to do is make them the best they can possibly be. We need to figure them out. So we are in pursuit of that information from the moment we start talking to them. And everything counts. And we're watching everything they do, how they act, how they talk and walk, who they hang with, who they don't hang with, the music they listen to, the way they dress. Everything gives us a message if we're really being observant. And so hopefully we do a great job of that, and then we can help them and expedite the process of making them the best they can be.
You're controlling this conversation. A lot of people think the people that control the conversation is the ones doing the talking. It's the ones that ask the questions that are controlling the conversation, because they're the ones gathering information. And you're directing where this conversation goes based on your questions. So when you want to find out the things that you want to know, what coach is talking about, ask questions and shut up and listen. And you will find out what you want to know. And then through those questions, you can also direct the focus of where you want to go with those questions.
Right. Well, speaking of questions, if you have them, make sure you ask them via Twitter at #CoachesChat. We got people from Florida, New York, Alabama. They're all over the country watching you guys. So we appreciate that. We'll be getting your questions here in a moment. But I want to get into the second chapter on commitment. I mean, you said, I didn't coach football. I coached kids who played football. That's hard for a football coach to make that decision. Was it hard for you?
No. I when people say, how'd you do it? When it boils down to it, I don't coach football. I don't. I coach kids who play football. And what I mean by that is I coach kids, if I can surround myself, and I don't care if they're high school kids or college kids or pro kids, and maybe coach thinks I'm crazy, and tell me if you do. But
I will.
I believe, thanks. I do believe this. If you surround yourself with an army of individuals, of players and coaches that are committed to character, commitment, integrity, they understand the difference in being hurt and being injured. They understand the dignity that you get in hard work and from hitting every single rep at practice with everything you got, because that hard work provides both excellence and dignity. And you surround yourself with people that is their foundation. The X's and O's and the wins come easy. So I don't coach football. I coach kids who play football, and I coach those kids on those tenets, those fundamentals. And then when that becomes our basis and our platform, then you can coach football all day long, and it's easy because you got an army of folks that know what's expected and that can persevere and win.
I couldn't agree with that more. That people would think that our focus is always on the Super Bowl and the championships and all that. It isn't. Our focus is on the individuals in the program. We know that through the process of developing their talent and bringing out the best they have to offer us, the end result takes care of itself. And because all we're trying to do is be the best we can be. And so we do that one person at a time and totally commit to the individuals, knowing that the end process, the end result will take care of itself, at least take you as far as you can go. The interaction that it takes to get that done, the communication, the effort that is put in, draws people together in a way that you can take them to heights that others maybe not be able to get to in another way.
And you've done that a ton. I mean, if you ask an analyst, some of the picks that you've had, or even back at SC, you took some kids who maybe weren't from the best backgrounds. It seems like you've always wanted to, whether it's your nonprofit work with a Better LA and a Better Seattle, or within your personnel, taking a chance on guys that you believe in versus maybe no one else believing in.
Well, Coach's story, I mean, his story is all about diving into those kids, and not just the really good kids that you could draw from, but some of the toughest nuts that you had to crack, to get to those guys, to bring it out of them. I mean, he had to work and strain and stress to get through to them. But what he was doing was making a commitment to those individuals. And once you got them, and once they realize how much you care about them, then the sky's the limit for what those young people can do.
That's it.
We've understood that, and we've shared that thought.
You coach kids. You don't coach football.
You know, it's interesting. One of the people watching, Greg, he asked you, Coach Courtney, what's a turkey person? I think this guy may have read the book. And remember, you can ask us any question you want with the hashtag Coaches Chat, and there's a nice chat right on the side of your screen there at CoachBillCourtney.com. So, Coach, what's a turkey person?
Well, Greg, here's what a turkey person is. And it's fitting because we're talking a little bit about commitment. My first year at Manassas, I had, have you heard the turkey person story yet? Have I told you?
I do know about it.
Okay. So I had half the team kind of buying in to all the fundamentals. Mm-hmm. Now, I had the whole team buying into football, half the team buying into everything, the stuff we're talking about. The other half team, yes or no, sir on the football field, but not the important stuff. And so I went to my guy, and every coach has a guy, and this is the guy that really kind of helped me acclimate. And I said, what do I got to do to get through to him? And he said, Coach, just keep doing what you're doing, dismissively. And this is the guy who was real with me about everything that I needed. And he dismissed me when I said, what's up with these guys? And I said, no, man, for real, what's up? And he said, all right, straight talk. I said, straight talk. He said, Coach, you're trying to figure out if you're a turkey person or not. And that's what I did. I was like, man, I mean, I'd heard what green was, and when they thought I was lying, they said you were flogging, and he explained it all to me, right? But turkey person I'd never heard. And I said, I don't understand. He said, Coach, every Christmas and Thanksgiving, people that look just like you from where you live roll into our neighborhoods and give us turkeys and hams and gifts, and we take them because we ain't got none. But then they leave, and we never see them again. Makes you kind of wonder if they're doing that because they really care about us, or they're doing that to make themselves feel good. And it taught me, that story changed my life forever, and it taught me that not only is it good enough to ask the questions and work on commitment and do all this stuff, but you have to do it for the authentic, real purpose of bettering another human for the benefit of them. And when you get authentic and when you get real and when the people that you seek to lead, whether it's in your business, in your family, in your football, recognize that you're not a turkey person, that you're not doing this for self-service, but you're doing this for their service so that everybody can be better, and they buy into you, like Coach was saying, and that you're not a turkey person, that's when things change. But those that seek to lead for the pats on the back, those that want to coach because they get off on the door plaque, those guys that like to be called coach on Saturday, and that's why they're doing it, they're frauds, and they'll never win their kids.
Better LA, better Seattle, you're huge in the community in both cities. And I've been in there with you, and you always go in and listen versus go in and try to preach or coach or talk. Why is that?
Well, it's the same thing when dealing with the players. You know, you need to get to know the ones you're dealing with, and you can't get to know them when you're yapping. You know, you got to listen, and you got to watch and pay attention, observe. Just like I told you about with our players, we have to receive all that information. So, and I want to know. I'm curious. You know, I want to know why and what's going on with them, and it just gives me the insights that maybe I can come back around and figure out a way to do something. I know that with both of those organizations, Better LA and Better Seattle, probably the greatest strength we have is staying power, because the people in the communities, they know if you're coming, they can see the programs coming, and they'll take what you give them and what you bring them. But that's not what's important to them. What's important, are you staying, and are you coming back? Will you stay with it? And the lessons have been obvious to us. You know, we've been working in LA for, I don't know, 12, 13 years now or something like that. You know, we're still there, and we're as strong as ever. And I take great pride in that. And I don't think it's any different than as we coach our teams. You know, we want to win for a really long time. And we're still here, and we're still doing what we believe in, and we stay with it. And that commitment to the consistency, I think, is really powerful, and it's meaningful to the ones that are receiving the message.
Well, Greg, thanks for the question. Keep the questions coming, and as you participate in the chat, we're going to be giving away a bunch of prizes at the end of this hour session with Coach Carroll.
You're no turkey person.
No,
there's no turkey person right here.
So I want to talk about another chapter in your book. You talk about fear and failure. And in high-pressure stakes environments, whether it's high school kids feeling pressure to perform and get a college scholarship, clearly the National Football League or major college football, there's a lot of pressure. And sometimes we can act from a place of fear. I want to call the safe play. I want to do what I should do versus what I really feel in my instinct. Talk about fear and failure, Coach, because I know it was a big chapter for you.
I think the greatest barrier to our success is the fear of failure. If you're so afraid to fail that you won't even allow yourself to try, you will never accomplish anything. You have to get over the fear of failure. Now, some people manage it. Some people ignore it. There's many ways to get over it. But if you don't figure out a way to get over the fear of failure, you'll never give yourself a chance to succeed in anything. And, you know, I have, in business, I have had many people come to me and say, hey, can I take you to lunch? I say, sure. We go to lunch. And the first words out of their mouth is, you know, how have you done it? I've got this great idea. Will you help me? And frankly, I say no. I say, not until you've gone home to your significant other and say, in 2 years, we might lose our house to a bankruptcy. We might have to take our kids out of our school and go move into a 1-bedroom apartment. Are you okay with that? And if the significant other doesn't say absolutely, don't do it, because your fear of failure will be supported at home. You have to have a group mentality about getting over the fear of failure to attack your goals. And it's interesting that that's how it works at home. That's how it works in a business. And that same group mentality has to be on a football team too. So it starts at the top. And when you finally decide, I'm going to go for this, and this is how I'm going to manage it, and you get over that fear of failure and you go for it, that's when things happen. But until you get over that fear, you'll always be too conservative, and you'll just always kind of just miss the mark. You got to get past it.
You know, Coach, it's a clear part of your philosophy, the Win Forever Pyramid. It's about competing in the absence of fear. When did you come about that thought, and were you operating from a place of fear before you got to that and got that clarity?
Well, I think it comes from understanding about performers and performance. Those that perform at their best, they're not performing with the doubts and the lack of confidence. You know, they're coming from a place of confidence, and they're coming from a place where they are certain that they're okay. And so how we deal with fear is through hard work and through the diligence of preparing yourself to be ready for whatever comes, so that you can get to the point where I know I'm okay, I'm all right. And I've been coaching our individual players and our team to understand that, to show them why they're worthy of being confident. Because without the confidence and the belief in yourself, that's when the uncertainty creeps in, and that's where the fear comes from. So we try to get to a place where we know we're okay, and we work our tails off to get to that point, and I try to prove it to them and orchestrate the process so that they'll understand that they're okay, so that they can now trust themselves and they can trust each other, and then the fears of failure, the concerns about not being worthy, just drift away. And so in essence, the fear isn't part of it, and that's where the absence of fear kind of comes from. And we work our way to that point. Because what we want them to do is, when it comes time to play, we want them not to be worried about anything. We want them to be able to focus because they're totally okay. And so that's where that comes from. So I'm all behind them.
That's exactly right. That's good stuff.
Well, make sure for both of these guys, CoachBillCourtney.com, you can check out his book, and WinForever.com, you can see Coach Carroll's book as well. Now, I want to keep going on this. When is enough preparation enough? Because coaches grind. When you're in a corporation, you're in a leadership position, you grind. You stay late, you come early, and those are great traits. But when do you know when enough is enough?
Well, I would tell you that you're either competing or you're not. You know, you're always going. And but I think there is a time when you have to declare for your performers, for your players, that they're ready, and the readiness is there, and so that they can be comfortable with that. But as a coach, you know, you're kind of always going. And you know, I said, you know, we're competing around the clock now, and that'll drive you crazy. But that's kind of how you have to be, because you never know when there's going to be a little gem that comes your way with an individual person, or with a scheme, or with an approach, or you know, that might give you that little edge that you're looking for. So we're always on.
For me, preparation stops at 6:59 on Friday night. It's 1 minute before game time, and then it's time to cut loose and have fun, man. Just let it go. You know, that's the time to let the anxiety go and just go get after it. You prepare up until it's time to go. When it's time to go, you let it go and you let it roll, take a day off, start prepping the next week. That's how I've always looked at it.
What's it like being around some elite performers like Russell Wilson, Richard Sherman, when you get into big, high-stakes environments playoff game, Super Bowl?
Well, it's a blast, first of all, because these guys, the guys that you're talking about, and a number of other players, Earl Thomas on our team, Cam Chancellor, Marshawn Lynch, these guys perform at the highest level their bodies and minds will be able to go. And we know that through the process, they're so driven and they're so gritty about applying themselves that by game time, they are ready to show who they are and what they're all about. They ain't holding nothing back. So there's nothing that's more fun to me than to be part of that and to kind of orchestrate that and then go watch it happen. You know, to me, game day, I'm watching the guys have fun playing and seeing what they're going to do, where the story's coming from, and where the occurrences are going to be that we're going to be going crazy about come Mondays. And so it's a great thrill, and it's also exciting to nurture those guys, because those guys they want to be so good that they're hungry to learn and they're hungry for whatever you can give them that can give them the edge, and that's a wonderful plane to be operating on. And there's nobody more competitive than Russell Wilson. He just will not back off the process at any time ever. I've never seen him when he wasn't on. So that's a real joy to work with guys like that.
Excellent. Well, we'll keep the questions coming. #CoachesChat. Now, before I get to another question from social media, I want to ask about the part of your book, Coach Courtney, that intrigued me the most, and it was about forgiveness. And I called you right after I read it. I said, man, there's no way. There's no way. Now, you tell this story way better than I do, but tell the story about your stepfather, Chuck, and what happened, and how you forgave this guy.
Well, I was in my teens, and my mother and father were divorced when I was 4, and I didn't have much of a relationship with my dad, and this was my stepdad, and things weren't going well, and he pulled out a .38 and shot at me down the hallway of my house, and I dove out a window to save myself and ran around, and then he turned the gun on my mom. Police came, and fortunately nobody died, but it's a pretty surreal experience, and about 12 years later, he was sick, and I went to visit him in the hospital, and he passed away, and he was cremated, and I literally dug the hole that we put his body in, or his remains in, and the only reason I tell the story is because I 100% absolutely forgave him for that night. He was in a bad place, and he asked for forgiveness, and he was sincere. And it was a legitimate plea for forgiveness. And, my personal belief is if you harbor anger and if you keep that hate and anger inside of you, if I'm mad at you and I hold all that against you, the only person that's being hurt from it's me, not you. Because, it's pretty simplification, but think about it. If you're angry as heck, how can you be happy? So you have to forgive to get that anger off of your heart in order to be happy and fulfilled. And it's one of the most liberating things in the world to let stuff like that go. And so I believe that grace and forgiveness is an extremely key component to being a fulfilled and happy husband, father, coach, business owner, friend, member of society, anything. And until you understand the power of forgiveness, not for the person you forgive, but the power of forgiveness for yourself, I don't think you can ever reach 100% of your potential in that regard.
Well, for you, you've been through a ton in your career, coaching-wise. Is it hard to let things go as a coach?
Well, some things I don't let go because I like them to fuel me, but it's really about...
Let me interrupt you one thing. There's a difference in forgiveness and a pardon. There's things I've forgiven people for, but I never forget them. John F. Kennedy says, always forgive your enemies, but never forget their names. I forgive them so they don't feel hate, but I don't necessarily pardon or forget because they can fuel a fire.
Yeah, and so there's some things, that I utilize in kind of a sick way to keep me going. But basically, I've been fired a lot, and I've been kicked around in trying to do something special. It wasn't always recognized that the effort and the wisdom might be there, and really through belief in what we were doing and confidence and stuff, that I wasn't knocked down to the point where I kind of gave in and really sanctioned their opinion. I really kind of didn't buy into the fact that the reason I was getting fired when I did, so it always kept me kind of going to the next, and I was always waiting for the next thing to go ahead and prove that we were okay and we were right and all that. So a couple different ways of looking at it for me.
Well, thanks for sharing the story, but we also have the hometown school coming in from St. George's outside of Memphis, where your kids go to school.
There you go.
They're all watching right now, so we appreciate it. A bunch of questions from them. One of them is they're comparing the film, Undefeated, and they ask about those people in in that town, at that school at Manassas. What was it like coaching them because of the difficulties that they went through? Did that enter into your mind a lot? Did you just say, well, I'm going to coach you guys as hard as I possibly can?
Honestly, no. Kids are kids. I don't care if you come from I have coached in a rural farming community. I've coached in an affluent suburb, and I've coached in the inner city. And a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid just wants to be part of something good and wants to play football. And their fears, their inhibitions, what makes them excited, their interests are all the same. Kids are kids. And if you treat some kids differently than other kids because of where they come from, then you're fraudulent, because the stuff that's in this book and the foundation you're creating changes based on the kids. I've got news for you. Whether you're good or evil, whether you are destined for success or failure, should have nothing to do with the zip code at the time of your birth. It's the luck of the draw in a lot of cases that some are born into this country in affluence and wonder, and some are born into a terrible situation in Nigeria. The zip code at the time of your birth has nothing to do with the essence of your character and your soul. Kids are kids. Doesn't matter where you come from. You coach them the same. You work them the same. You give them the same love. You give them the same everything. And you give them a level playing field and the same things they need to compete, and then let them roll. And they will be successful.
Good question for everybody at St. George's. Remember, all your questions, hit us up with the hashtag CoachesChat for Coach Courtney's book, Against the Grain, CoachBillCourtney.com, and for Coach Carroll's at WinForever.com. Now, the next question I want to ask you is I get asked all the time. I'm around college campuses, and the pressure on college students and student athletes is immense. Getting an A, doing well in school, playing well on the football field. And then when their careers end, or their degrees finish, they enter the real world, and the social pressures are immense. What's your advice to kids in that zone, and then finally when they leave college?
Well, there's a really built-in natural problem that I see, and whether you're taking high school kids to college, college kids to the pros, or pro athletes leaving their career and going into the real world, that our identities are so connected to the game that we play. We've not known ourselves as anything but football guys. And when that's no longer there, there's a real hollow feeling. There's a real emptiness about your sense of yourself that has to be dealt with. And we don't do a great job of preparing guys for that. And there's really a sad level of failures in this regard, of people being able to move on with their life and being successful and finding the things you would think would have been characteristic to the experience of football exchanged and taken into the next steps of their lives does not necessarily transfer. And so we have to try and instill, as our jobs as coaches, no differently than we do as parents, is try to give our kids a balanced way of looking at the world and help them understand the lessons that they're learning and how they translate and transfer to their later life. And what I hope the guys will do is that they will use the lessons and be able to make sense of how it worked for them here. It will also work for them and it can translate into their regular lives. But that's not happening as much as it should and we need it to. And I don't think we spend nearly the amount of time in preparation. I mean, we know what this is like. All three of us were playing, and we all know what that was like. And there's a big hole when that was over, and we've had to deal with it for a long time. I'm still pissed I'm not playing. I still want to play. I can't put any other way. I still wish I was playing right now. But I've had to figure out how to live with it. My way was to stay connected to the game. But it's just a big transition, and anybody who is that committed to something with this much energy and this much of our life forces, you're going to go through a big transition, and they're not always ready. So we just need to do a better job of preparing them and hopefully transferring the lessons that they've learned into their their regular lives afterward.
Coach Courtney, what have you seen? You've traveled the country since you won an Oscar. You speak all over the world. people are always seeking advice. What do you talk to them about when they ask for, how do I get through and persevere through these tough times?
I mean, it sounds like an oversimplification, but if I put a football right there and said for the remaining 20 or 30 or however long we're doing this, one of these folks out here, would you just mind standing on that football while we finish the chalk? I mean, they might stay there for 7 or 8 seconds, and they're going to fall off of it. And they say, come on, get up there. They're eventually going to look at you and say, Coach, I'd love to help you, but I can't stand on a football. And if you stacked a brick of $100 bills about that thick as 10 grand, if you stacked them up, I don't know, about up to Coach's shoulder, that's about $1 million. I've said, stand on that. You can have it if you can stand on it for as long. They might try, but that thing's going to buckle and fold right out from under them. If we took this beautiful trophies that are in the front of this facility and asked you to stand on them, they'd break. You can't stand on a football. You can't stand on money. You can't stand on trophies. You can't stand on accolades. You can't stand on fame. You can't stand on fortune. If that is your basis, if that is your foundation, if that's what defines you, you will fall. And we just illustrated that it's a scientific fact you can't stand on it. Conversely, if you are defined by commitment, character, integrity, an understanding of the dignity of hard work, a willingness to operate your life with grace, the understanding of the importance of civility, and that's your foundation, then you stand on that and hold all the money and footballs and fame and glory that comes your way. And I think what happens is we allow our kids to be defined by the wrong thing. It's okay to have that stuff, but our foundation, our definition has to be something much more substantive so that when the game's over and the world hits them in the mouth, they fall back on a foundation rather than something you can't stand on.
You know, Coach, I remember you telling me as a young assistant, I've heard you talk to other assistants about creating value. Not worrying about the outcome where you're going, but just creating value. Dive into that one a little bit for us.
Well, I think it's a responsibility that we need to understand is ours. Wherever you're working, whatever you're doing, it's your opportunity to create your own value within the organization or the lifestyle that you've chosen. It's our job to make something of ourselves. And if we're looking for somebody else to give that to us or to make that for us, we're not going to be as strong, we're not going to be in control, and we're really giving away our power in doing that. So the simple understanding of no matter what job you have, if it's a $2 job, give them $3 worth of work and bust your tail to prove who you are and what you're all about. And then you'll find that your value will increase. When it comes time for the next go around or the next calendar year or the next contract, they're going to say, we can't afford to lose this guy. And if he's going somewhere else, we got to keep him. We may have to pay him more or whatever. And you are the one that is responsible for that. I think that it's pretty common that people coming out of colleges, I know, and maybe out of high schools as well, they're thinking, well, okay, I went to college now, let's go. It's my turn to cash in on it. Well, I think that's just when the games begin. And that's when you need to, whatever job you take, whatever step you make, that's where you go with the right attitude that I'm going to make myself something special out of this. That's where this creating your value really comes to play. And it's again, it's another mentality about competing, and a little bit of grit doesn't hurt, and all that takes place.
If you got a $2 job, give them $3 worth of effort.
Pretty good, huh?
That's awesome.
Put a
Yeah,
hashtag
that's
on that
right.
one.
That's it.
Talking about perseverance, my favorite story, chapter 7. Get the book, get that chapter. And you talk about Katie Holloway, Seattle-based, grew up in this community. Tell me about Katie and this story.
I was at Colorado Springs talking to the Paralympics before they went off to England for the summer games a few years back. And I'm going around watching people who compete in judo and they're blind. Compete in judo and they're blind. Really? I mean, hit me so I know where you are and then I'll start trying to wrap you up. I mean, I don't even understand it. And I meet this lovely young lady walking toward me, and she's 6'2" or 3. And I asked her, I said, so you're a coach? And she said, no, I'm a Paralympian. I was like, what's wrong with you? And she sat on a park bench and pulled her leg off and showed me that she was missing a leg, and she'd had that since she was an infant. And I got to know her a little bit, and then I found out about her story. She played college ball in California and was the 6th woman of the year twice, averaged around 15 points and 7 rebounds a game with one leg. And I don't mean in Paralympics. I'm talking about in basketball. When she was playing basketball in high school, she wore a knee brace over her prosthetic leg. Now, here's a newsflash. You don't need a knee brace if you don't have much of a leg, right? She did it so that college recruiters wouldn't know that she had a prosthesis. And when she got recruited by everybody and they found out, they backed off. Despite what they saw with their own eyes and how amazing she was, many of them backed off because of it. And despite it, she kept going. When she was a kid, she would play basketball or play sports, and her prosthetic would break, and the doctor would say, if you keep this up, you're gonna have to quit competing. And she said no, and they drove to another city and found another doctor to make a better prosthetic. She was cut off a basketball team because of this thing, went to another town and made another team. Her parents said, you just don't stop. This leg thing is not gonna quit you. And now she's won 2 silver medals in the Paralympics, was the 6th man of the year in the conference in her basketball. And to me is just this unbelievable example of you always compete and nothing stops you if you have the courage to persevere.
That's the kind of player I'm looking for. There you go.
Oh man, she could be a 3 technique. I guarantee it, Coach.
Well, Katie, I hope you're watching. And we got people watching from South Africa, from France, all across the United States, so we appreciate it. Remember, keep asking your questions. You're going to get given prizes at the end of this event. We only got about 15 minutes left, guys. So I want to dive into a category that I think both of you would agree with: hard work. Both of you like to compete, fight, grind, all of those elements. When, Coach, when were you able to verbalize the phrase, you know what, I'm a competitor?
Well, it really came to me because I'd been fired and kicked around at New England, and I was getting ready. I was reading a book, I was reading John Wooden's book, and I got inspired by what I had read. He had been coaching at UCLA for 16 years, and in the next year he won the national championship. He won 10 of the next 12. Once he figured out who he was, and it took him a long time, he was unstoppable, and he finally retired. Well, after I read that, it just hit myself in the head, like, I got to get my act together. And through the process of trying to figure out exactly what was the most powerful beliefs that I owned, I came to try to figure out myself, and in a word, it came out, I'm a competitor. I've been competing my whole life. And I felt very comfortable with that. I felt like I could almost hang in any conversation or situation and explain where I'm coming from based on that thought. And so fittingly, the central theme in our program became competition, and we built around that ever since. But that was really the best way, the most simplified way I could describe myself, and I felt pretty comfortable about that.
Bill, can you cultivate a work ethic? I mean, you got a lumberyard, you coach football.
Yeah.
How do you do it in the professional sense?
Yeah, you can, but I'm sitting here listening. Won the Super Bowl. Talk about, I had to get my act together and define who I was, and I was a competitor. And when I talk about hard work in the book, I talk about the dignity of hard work. And just listen to Coach. The dignity in who he is as a competitor. I mean, the definition of what he is when he says that, and the way his eyes just lit up when he said that. I mean, that's what it's about. It's the dignity you get out of competing, the dignity you get out of working. I worry so much about affluent families giving their children the trappings of everything they've earned, cars and nice clothes and trips, and those kids thinking that that's the way the world works, because one, it's going to fail them, and two, what dignity do they get if they don't have to earn something? I worry in the same regard about some of the disadvantaged among us who aren't working. And it's not just a money thing. It's the dignity that's stripped from their souls and their families, because they can't look themselves in the mirror at the end of the day and say, I earned this. I got my stuff together. I figured out who I was. The dignity you get from competing and hard work in the business place, at home, in your families, all over the place. What happens to our society when we have the vast majority of us not understanding the dignity they get from hard work? So it's not just competing on a football field that matters. In a much greater plane, we as human beings need the self-satisfaction of knowing we've accomplished something and we have competed, and the dignity we get and the chest we can throw out, the head we can hold high from actually completing a task with hard work. It's not about the money to me. It's about the dignity we're losing in our society without that fundamental.
You know, Yogi, I've always felt like that connection with hard work, whether you're a Pop Warner kid or a high school kid or a college kid or a pro or going on, is really one of the most significant factors that you can come to understand. If you want something, you have to work for it, and you have to develop yourself and make yourself worthy of owning it. And that's exactly what we're talking about as we prepare for this year after a Super Bowl victory. It's about hard work. It's about recapturing the work ethic and what it takes to be at your best in the simplest of forms. And it is because of all that it stands for. And it takes a lot to get that done, and it takes commitment and consistency and commitment and conviction and all. And but in simple terms, it's about hard work, and it always comes back to that if you want to be at your best. So
It really does.
It's a really cool thought.
Coach Courtney, how do you do that with your kids? 'Cause you speak to Fortune
My own
500
children?
companies all the time. Yeah, how do you do it? 'Cause
Not
you
my
talk about it
football
in the
kids,
book.
my kids.
Yeah, you talk about it in the book.
And I own a lumber company, and we're in Memphis. I mean, during the summer, it'll be 100 degrees outside, 98% humidity, not a cloud in the sky. A fat guy like me sweats when he gets out of the shower. I mean, it's hot. It's nasty, right? And it's dusty. It's a lumber company. It's a mill. There's stuff flying around everywhere, sawdust. And ever since 14 years old, both of my daughters, my kids are 18, 17, 16, and 15. At 14 years old, starting with my girls down to my boys, you got steel-toe boots, you got a hard hat, you got gloves, and you will work 40 hours a week during the summer. I don't care how much money I make. You will work 40 hours a week during the summer, and you will, we're not talking about in the office answering the phone, out on the yard, pulling lumber, doing what you got to do. And I just talked about in the book that my kids have fixed bearings inside 120-degree kilns. They've scraped what looks like lava off the inside of boilers when they're 130 degrees in the summer heat. They've pulled lumber right alongside common laborers working hard. And the two things that I love most about it is they understand the value of a dollar because they've had to earn it. And the second thing is, when they're in college and they drive by the guy on the corner that's operating that jackhammer and he's all tatted up and sweaty and everything else, they won't look down their nose at that guy because they've worked alongside him, and they appreciate the fact that that man is working for what he's got, and they see the dignity in what he's doing for himself and his family. That doesn't come if everything's given to you. You have to work to appreciate work.
Well, somebody working right now is Derek Barrows. He's watching from the U.S. Navy base in Spain. So definite shout out to you, Derek, and the rest of you. We're going to do a rapid fire.
Service.
Yeah, thanks for your service, man. Huge fans. We're going to do rapid fire here in a minute. But before we get to that, send your questions via Twitter with the hashtag #CoachesChat. I want to ask you guys about legacy. I mean, this is important to you, Coach. It's part of the last chapter of your book. If you were going to talk about what you think Coach Carroll's legacy will be when he's finished coaching, what would you say?
You know, I can't tell you how many coaches
You
I
don't have
have.
to answer this if you don't want to.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many coaches I know in high school that every practice day has a title now. I can't tell you about how many times you see T-shirts that says "Win the Day," always compete, and it's whatever, Tackle Tuesday and We Go Crazy Wednesday and Thump It Thursday or whatever, right? Every day's got a title, and it's win the day, seize the day, always compete. And it's gotten to a point now that high schools are mimicking schools and coaches are mimicking coaches, and they don't understand the origin of that. Well, the origin of that is sitting right next to me. The guy who titled his practices, the guy who always compete, win forever, compete in your family, compete for your kids, compete at practice, always. I mean, and schools all over the country have this mentality, and I'm not even sure they know where it comes from, but I do. It came from Coach Carroll and the win forever philosophy. And so, yeah, he won a Super Bowl. Yeah, that's cool. They're going to be able to have a trophy out here in this beautiful facility. That's not the legacy, man. The legacy is the mentality he's left behind. That's something that can't be traded or sold or lost in a garage sale. That's something that's in a kid's mind and in programs' hearts and souls that define who they are. And to me, that's what Coach Carroll's about, and that's the legacy he leaves. And a lot of folks need to know where all that came from, because he's the one that started naming that stuff.
Your coaching career started really early. Everybody doesn't know when you started coaching Pop Warner football. You've been around guys like Bill your whole life, always had an affinity for coaches. You've seen the doc, you've been around the book, you've been around Coach a couple times. What do you think his influence is?
Well, his influence is so obvious. He's demonstrated his belief in the power of individuals. And if you'll buy into people and give yourself to them and help them find themselves, extraordinary things happen. Extraordinary stories occur. His whole story is off the charts, and it's because he has had this tremendous drive to give to the people around him in a way that serves them and allows them to do things and to see things and experience things and to grow in ways they never would have without his influence. And I've loved the story from the very beginning, and I didn't even know the guy, and everything about it was just so powerful because you demonstrated what it is to give of yourself and what that can mean in a person's life. He's been extraordinary.
Coach, the last question I have for you, and this has been asked multiple times on social media, but coaches always want to win forever. Coaches want to win championships. They want to go to the Hall of Fame. They want to celebrate with the team and hold the trophy up. What's your advice to coaches in terms of succeeding, competing daily, and not necessarily worrying about something they can't control, such as a championship?
Well, yeah, that's something that's always been really a foundation pillar here. It's about controlling the things that you can control. We really can't. We couldn't control the Denver Broncos and Peyton Manning. We had no factor we could play in that. To focus on that would have been a total waste of our time. What we want to really be disciplined about is working to control the things that are within our grasp and maximizing them. And that's why it has always been about us. It hasn't been about the other guy. And it's never been about the championship or the storyline of what you could possibly accomplish. It's been about maximizing what we could possibly create within ourselves. And to me, that's when you're competing to be your best, that's when you're a winner. It has nothing to do with the result. It has to do with the effort that you put in, the hard work that you're willing to endure, the direction and the commitment to making yourself the best and making the day, making the situation, making the group that you're dealing with the best they could possibly be. That's winning. If a kid on a Little League team is the best third base coach and you make him a heck of a third base coach and he takes great pride in it, that's a great victory. And if he takes pride in it, it's a great takeaway for him. And so that's really been the approach, and that's what I would hope that people could understand, that there's extraordinary power and there's great gifts that you give when you believe in your people in that way. Everything you have to make them everything they can become. And whatever the results are, you win. And we can't win every game. We'd like to, and we're going to try, but that's really not the goal.
It's not the goal. It's not about that. It's not. He's so right, and that's the reward. I mean, that's when you lay your head in the pillow at night and you stare up at the ceiling. And you say, "Hell yeah, that's good stuff." That's when you sleep well at night. Is when you know the people around you are winning because they're competing.
You wrote about a legacy, a true legacy. You said it's established over a lifetime and it relates to what a human being does for others, not for himself. That sounds great. It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, sure it's hard. I mean, it's hard to be authentic. It's hard not to be a turkey person. It's hard to do all those things. But you know what happens? If you go against the grain of what's easy and you do the uncommon, that's when the most amazing things happen for you in your life. Yes, it's hard, but I just wrote a book about going against the grain and taking the hardest route and having a fulfilled life you never really imagined possible.
That's Bill Courtney.
That's Bill Courtney.
That's it.
That's
That's
right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, so let's dive into social media real quick. We're going to go rapid fire, okay? We got a few minutes left. We got people from all across. We got England, we got Washington, New Mexico, Spain, and France, South Africa. It's pretty sweet. So we appreciate all of you coming out. Get your question really quick because we're going to roll through this.
Stump the coach.
Right now. See if we can
Stump
stump
the
these guys.
coach.
I'm going with the
I'm
hard question.
going to coach, right?
Oh, no, I'm coming to all you guys. Coming correct. Okay, here we go. Coach Courtney. Oh, here's a good one. They want to know, how did you meet your wife? And when things go awry on a field, in your personal life and professionally, how do you deal with it?
I met my wife at the lunchroom of the first place I ever coached. She was the niece of the lunchroom lady, and the lunchroom lady kept saying, "Hey, I got to introduce you to my niece," and I'm like thinking Ruth Buzzy, right? Hairnut, I don't want to, And then this thing walks in the back door, and my big, stupid, ugly, fat self, red hair, goes, "Wow, she's hot." Took me 6 months to get her to date me. That's how I met her. How do you deal with things when they go awry? Look in the mirror, be honest with yourself about what you've done wrong. You cannot change another person's attitude by arguing and convincing them that they're wrong and you're right. Look yourself in the mirror, be honest with yourself about what you've done wrong, fix it, and then seek to serve in order to lead. And if you would do that and your spouse would do that, there's never a problem. It's when selfishness comes in and a lack of civility comes in and you put up barriers that destroy relationships. Be honest with yourself, fix what you can fix, and serve. And if you do that, relationships work.
Well said. Shout out to the wife.
Yeah.
Glad you
What's
got
up,
her, man.
Mama?
Coach Carroll, because in Win Forever book that you wrote that we got to do together, first page you talk about John Wooden. How often do you reference Coach Wooden now in your career?
I don't talk too much about that. It's just become part of the mentality, part of our upbringing, and you know, he had his career a long time ago. Our guys were barely kicking when that all happened, but the principles and the tenets of what he stood for really come roaring through our approach, and that's really believing in what we're doing and being committed to our philosophy.
Coach Carroll and Coach Courtney, it's a really good question from Andy. He says, how do you handle players who seem as though they're kind of not listening or maybe not as engaged as you'd hope they'd be?
Wow, that's your whole story. Go ahead, Andy. Andy's asking.
Well, first, sometimes you got to get their attention. And, you know, if you want to act like a clown, sometimes you go to the circus. And other times you have to figure out what's causing that behavior. A lot of times it has nothing to do with you as a coach. A lot of times it has nothing to do with the players. A lot of times there's things going on outside of what you are operating that are causing that. And so, you know, I've found it really helpful to take some one-on-one time with guys that are maybe you're struggling with and find out what they're struggling with. And again, ask questions and listen. And many times the answers to the hardest questions will be told to you if you'll just shut up and listen to them. And then lastly, it's easy to love the perfect player. It's easy to love Russell Wilson. It's easy to love that guy. It's the tough ones that you love despite of, not because of. And eventually when they find out that you're going to love them and be there for them despite the things they do, not because of the good things they do, they'll figure out your authenticity and they'll come around for you.
That's the answer.
Coach Carroll, last one for you. We're not going to answer all the draft questions. There's a lot about personnel, so we won't go there. You send them at Pete Carroll. He'll respond on Twitter, all those.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you will.
But, Coach, this comes from Kevin. And, Kevin, I believe Kevin's in London. And I know you've talked to coaches around the world. They've come to your program. You've always had an open door with them. What's it like seeing football explode in the UK, in Asia, all over the world? I mean, I played in Australia. It's everywhere.
Yeah, well, it's really exciting. The Birmingham Lions are a team we followed for years. You know, they've been a championship team there in England for years. And been connected to their coaching staff and all. It's really cool stuff. It's going on in Mexico. Mexico City has a tremendous amount of football going on. In Japan, there's a bunch of football going on there. You can see the league, the NFL, is trying to extend into Europe and into Canada and all. It's exciting to see that the wonderful virtues of this sport are being received in other cultures and all. And it's not. It doesn't have to go to the other countries. They've got great games, and soccer is the greatest game in the world. But for us, it's wonderful that people are recognizing it, and it's the power of the media that continues to extend the message for us.
Coach Courtney, your coaching career, well documented, won the Oscar. You've coached a lot of different teams that nobody really knows about. We've got a question asking you about your most rewarding moment of your coaching career.
Wow. Probably the moments I got to coach my own children. Watching my oldest daughter Maggie make a bank shot from 8 feet when she has a trouble walking and chewing gum. Unbelievably great artist, wonderful person, but you know, she just wasn't athletically inclined. But coaching her in 6th grade and watching her drop a bank shot, and watching Molly, my daughter, at 122 pounds, win the shot put, and watching my son Will wrestle and just compete against guys, you know, 20 pounds heavier than him, and watching my youngest son, Max, this year play quarterback and his team go undefeated and coaching them in that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's for me, the most amazing experiences coaching have been watching and being able to compete with my own kids.
So to bring it back to the book, Against the Grain, which you can get at CoachBillCourtney.com, when you look at this book, what do you want somebody who really may not be into football get when they go and read through these 14
It is not a sports book. You've read it. Is it a sports book? It's got a lot of sports stuff in it, but it's a business book. It's a faith-based book. And I don't mean a Christian book. I mean, I talk about lots of faith. It's a business book. It's not it's a little bit of all that. But the 30,000-foot view of this book is this: we can be an open-minded, inclusive, forward-thinking society without abandoning the core principles that got us here in the first place. And I'm tired of core principles and being forward-thinking. I'm tired of our society and how somehow we've evolved in pop culture today that people say those two things are polar opposites. I completely disagree. They absolutely work together. And if you will commit to those core philosophies and be civil and open-minded, amazing things can happen in our society. And that's in our politics, in our family, in the workplace, in football, and society.
Do you ever think all this would happen to you? Win an Oscar, sit next to
Oh,
Coach?
yeah. That's exactly what I thought. When these two guys showed up with camcorders at Manassas High School, and I think I don't know if you know that the only thing they'd ever produced before Undefeated was a documentary on the World Series of beer pong. That's it. And then they make this movie, and 6 months later, I'm walking down the red carpet, and 2.5 years later, I'm speaking all over the country, writing a book, hanging out with the guy who I idolized. Are you serious? No, I never thought anything. The only difference in me and thousands of other Americans in the world is that my story got told. But here's the deal. When my story got told, it gave me a platform, and I wasn't going to use that platform for just stupid stuff. I want to talk about stuff that matters. I want to talk about these things. We need to have civil, open conversations about how we can progress and still not abandon who we are fundamentally and how those work together. And that opportunity was given to me, and so I'm taking it.
You guys have fun today?
Yeah, it's good. Good. How do you win an Oscar coaching ball? That's what I can't figure out.
That doesn't work, does it? I don't know.
Congratulations.
Is that all right? Did you have a good time?
Thank you.
Good time.
Hope everybody had fun.
Yeah, it was fun. We definitely need to thank a few people. Melanie Grassi, she did the whole set. It was unbelievable.
Really nice.
Media Connect Partners put on the entire event. Expert Video Services from Seattle right here. They helped out a ton. And, of course, Weinstein Books, which helped publish your book. And for all of you out there, if you want to get more information on Coach Courtney, CoachBillCourtney.com, Coach Carroll at WinForever.com. And check out these books. Check out Win Forever. Check out Against the Grain. Two guys that truly understand how to maximize the potential and will offer you the steps and the principles to get what you hopefully desire, which is the vision that we all get to create. So I'm Yogi Roth from Seattle signing off. We appreciate it. And keep following Coach Courtney, Coach Carroll for more inspirational content, fellas. We appreciate it.
Thanks, brother.
Later.
All right.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks.
Nice golf.
Okay.